This is episode 22. This is the first in a two-part series about tennis in Russia. Tennis in Russia.
Tennis in Russia. Russians in tennis.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go through some notes here. Next week, we're going to interview Natalia Sorokina. She's from Moscow. She played as a junior. She trained at the famous Spartak club.
Yeah.
She knows the story of many successful Russian players. She's been through our training. She completed an internship with us about 5 years ago. 4 children, her and her husband. Mm-hmm. She visits periodically. Right now she's here for 3 weeks with a young daughter. I say here in Florida. She lives currently in Southern California. Her daughter's name is Taisia. Yeah. She's really a testament to the GreatBase. She has an Instagram account.
Taisia Tennis.
Taisia Tennis. Can you spell that?
It's
We'll do it next week.
I got it.
You got it. Good.
Taisiya Tennis.
I love names like that. Taisia. Yeah. When your name is Steve Smith, Taisia. Got to sing it. Taisia.
Taisia.
Steve Roberts, Dave Anderson, Mark Walpole, Jimmy Johnson, and a list of others who we've trained have worked with Taisia. Mm-hmm. Natalia, I would say, is the architect. Obviously, Alexei, the husband as well, but brick by brick, developed tennis player. That'll be part of next week's story. First met Natalia, and you were part of that. A group of us went to Tennis Memphis, nonprofit. Mm-hmm. Our group was there for 24 months, but she came in, did an internship. Before she arrived, she had been there the first time with her children. Somebody at a tournament told her her 2 boys came in. At that time, Taisia was just 4 years old.
Max and Valentine.
Yeah. But anyway, she came back to do an internship. New York Times or Wall Street Journal, Daniel Coyle's book, I have some notes on that here, Spartak.
Yeah, Talent Code.
Well, it's in the book, his book Talent Code, but then again, maybe it was just a chapter that was...
right, the article.
The article, yeah. I sent a letter email to the parents of the players in Tennis Memphis and said that she was coming. Mm-hmm. Spartak, here it comes. Mm-hmm. Fitness, toughness. The kids were shocked. But I had previously employed 3 fitness trainers from Russia, and I knew that she would bring that same intensity.
Yeah.
Russia. From Russia with love.
Mother Russia.
I had this down to go through. Starting with ice hockey, for me in the 1960s, my father was a student of hockey, so therefore he was certainly interested in Russian hockey. He was a youth coach for decades. Mm-hmm. As a hobby, he followed college hockey. I'll tell you how dedicated he was. He's a civil engineer, had an antenna on his car. We're talking a big antenna. And he would go to the highest hill in the nearest county to listen to college hockey games on the radio.
This was in the 60s.
In the 60s. He also had an antenna on her TV in this little community in upstate New York. We were the only house in the village that got a hockey night in Canada because we would just, you could just hear the whole house turn when you would just turn the antenna. My oldest brother, Mike, he got a PhD in Russian studies. He lived at home after undergraduate school.
And that was really to study hockey, right? Is that... Well, was he really interested in Russian studies?
You'd have to ask him. I think so. I always think of him as a fellow jock, not a PhD candidate. We tease hockey players, like in the locker room. My mother did a lot of typing, so used to say that they got a PhD together, 50% his and 50% hers. But through that, he studied hockey, and the Russians were so successful and so creative. He wrote 10 books on hockey. The first one was called Dryland Training for Ice Hockey.
That's amazing.
In 1972, the Russians came to Canada. They played the NHL All-Stars and proved that they were highly, highly competitive. At that time, I remember there was only 22 hockey rinks in the entire country. I should be able to tell you the godfather of Russian hockey, but he was quoted saying he'd like to thank the Canadians for inventing hockey so we could develop it. Mm-hmm. But he started off as a practice coach because he knew Russian drills with the New York Rangers. Been from that, blossomed a career in the NHL. Assistant coach, scout. For short stint, he was a head coach, but he was the GM of 2 NHL teams, an associate GM of a third. This is funny. He used to get the Russian newspaper called the Pravda. I was a little kid. The FBI, 2 guys knock on the door. I was the only guy home. This is back in the Cold War, Russia.
Yeah.
And they came back another time to talk to my parents, but they were just checking out my brother. We used to tease him because
why are you getting this Russian newspaper,
especially
in small town New York?
Especially when you couldn't read a word. Couldn't read a word of the Russian.
Yeah.
So through that, I had an introduction to Soviet sports with just how the whole system worked. And we'll certainly get into that. Now, Natalia, she'd have to talk to her parents more than the Russians of today.
Right.
Because in 1989, I have that in my notes, we'll go through it, the fall of communism. I always thank my Aunt Ronnie for the fall of communism. She used to say the rosary all day, every day. Seriously, she'd be saying the rosary. And I'd always say, who are you praying for? She said, I'm praying for the Russians. They don't have freedom. So when she passed away, I told the people at the funeral that there were a lot of Russians have to thank our Aunt Ronnie. Yeah. But in the 1970s, Alex Metrovelli, USSR, he's really from Georgia, but he was considered a Russian. 1962.
Yeah, Georgia the country.
Georgia the country, right.
Wondering, listener.
So he won Junior Wimbledon in 62, number 9 in the world eventually. In 1973, there was a boycott. Wimbledon, the ATP pros. Nikki Pilic had refused to play Davis Cup for the former Yugoslavia. And the players joined together, and those who were not a member of the ATP or did not support the boycott played Wimbledon. But he was a very good tennis player. I remember watching him one time at Boca Raton at one of Bill Reardon's tournaments just for a week. Came there early and practiced with Vitas Gerulaitis. Also in the 70s, it just let us know that there was tennis in Russia. Olga Morozova, she was from Moscow. She got to the finals of the French in Wimbledon in 74. She won the French doubles with Everett in 74, number 7 in the world. Metrovelli and Morozova were in the Wimbledon mix in 68 and 70. It's interesting what happened. In 1975, Martina Navratilova from the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, I should say, from Czechoslovakia, now the Czech Republic. Yeah. 18 years old, she defects for political asylum. In those years, we use the terms, behind the Iron Curtain. 1943, Yalta, Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt. So Czechoslovakia would have been considered a puppet nation, controlled by Mother Russia. So definitely, there was political issues between the East and the West. We in the U.S. being from the West, all of Western Europe, but certainly there was conflicts between the East and the East, so Russia and Czechoslovakia. For example, Nastasi, the jokester from Romania, Jan Kodic was a great Czechoslovakian player.
Right.
And Nastasi, he used to call him the Russian.
Get under his skin a little bit.
The tennis was suppressed during many years of Soviet rule. But Czechoslovakia, Drobny won Wimbledon in 1954, and tennis was very popular in Czechoslovakia and also in parts of Yugoslavia, but not all over Eastern Europe. Here would be an example of the conflict between Russia and Czechoslovakia. In 1968, the Russians invaded Czechoslovakia. The famous hockey player, Jagr, that's why he always wore number 68. Around that time, it was actually in 75, one of the best junior players in the world was a girl named Shemraiva. I saw her at the Orange Bowl. She was expected to be a sure thing on the Pro Tour. But after Navratilova from Czechoslovakia defected, you didn't really hear much of junior tennis players from the USSR for a while. the speculation was that players they didn't have the freedom to travel, not to travel at their own free will, and also like Naratilova, besides not being able to set her own schedule, she could not control her own winnings, her own money.
Yeah.
In the Soviet Union, everything was representing the flag, and the biggest thing were Olympic sports. Tennis was an Olympic sport between 1896 and 1924. In 1968 and 1984, tennis was an Olympic sport. In 88, that's when Graf won the Golden Grand Slam. She won 4 Grand Slams plus Wimbledon. So it was...
Plus the Olympics, right?
In the Olympics. So she... So in 88, it was official. It was Olympics gold was available for the Russians. Boris Yeltsin, USSR, Soviet Union, president 91 to 99. He loved tennis. So as if tennis was reinstated and promoted through Yeltsin. But at the same time, people wanted to travel. Just one out of curiosity, just freedom. Then when one Russian player was successful, the next Russian player wanted to be successful.
Yeah.
Here's the Berlin Wall, the fall of communism. The governments through Eastern Europe opened up. It was in 1989. Prior to that, again, it was very difficult for people to leave. There was so much toughness on border control. Money was a problem. And I remember going to other countries to study tennis. With on the black market, tennis coaches were making anywhere between $200-$300 a month, and that's what they would get if they sold a modern racket on the black market.
Yeah.
I first went to Russia in 1987, USSR. I traveled from Germany. I was teaching tennis in Germany. The U.S. dollar wasn't very strong, and I was just, curious to study Russian sport. But when I went, I had to go with a tourist group, so I went with a group of Germans, and you had to stay in one hotel. You just rode one bus. I had the trip endorsed by the ITF. Doug McCurdy, an American at the time, was the director of development for the ITF. We talked about earlier podcast, CompuTennis.
Yeah.
I took CompuTennis. It was just Doug said, why don't you do what you can do, share ideas of coaching expertise. When I entered the country, going through the border check, dealing with the security, they disassembled the laptop computer right in front of me. I had to strip to my underwear. Felt like I was in a movie. The meeting was a no-show. The tennis meeting was a no-show. But my older brother, so through his, going back to his position in hockey, there used to be this term with Bobby Orr, who came into the game in the 60s. He really opened up the game and was a rushing defenseman. He'd carry the puck from one end to the next. So people used to say it's not that my brother liked rushing defensemen, he liked Russians. But he became the GM of Winnipeg, the Winnipeg Jets at that time. Small market, they didn't have the big time dollars. There wasn't market sharing, and they had to bring the Russians in, and obviously they were skilled and worthy of every opportunity because of their skill level, but they were paid less because they played in Winnipeg. But again, so the tennis meeting was a no-show, but my brother gave me advice, very good directions. He said, just call this number. Don't say one word. Just say the number of your hotel room. And because the tourists would just come in, you'd just stay in the Red Square, stay in your one hotel. It would be all tourists in that one hotel. And you just would ride the one bus over and over again, seeing all the beautiful sights around just the Red Square.
Yeah.
So a day later, there was a knock on the hotel door. It was a nice gentleman in Russian, obviously, by the name of Nick. He was shocked that I had got through border control, like maybe 12, 15 magazines, newspapers, all about tennis. And he was not, he was not a tennis guy. He was a hockey guy. But I can remember him unbuckling his pants and putting them in his pants. There was so much paranoia. He was nervous just to be in the hotel, and he dressed like a Westerner.
It was like Western magazines.
Clothes. Yeah, I mean, they were all in English. But when I went through the border and they took apart CompuTennis and were focused on that.
Yeah.
They just slipped and didn't go through some of the rest of my luggage. Back in those days, I worked at a college, but in the summers, I did some different unique things and spent a lot of time overseas. And I would have my mail sent to me. There was no internet and no emails and that type of thing.
Yeah.
But he was not supposed to be in the hotel. The Russian was not supposed to be near the tourists. I mean, I can remember going for a run in the Red Square at night and having the headlights come after me, Jeeps coming after me. No. There was no running in the Red Square after midnight in those days.
That was in 87, right?
Yeah. But there was a constant feeling of paranoia through Nick, but just in general. It's really government. You get to meet people from Russia, from China, from different parts of the world where there are different forms of government. But people are people. They just want in our world, they just want to hit some tennis balls.
Yeah.
Make sure their family's okay, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. But through Nick, I saw all these different tennis centers in Moscow. I mean, I was taken to Spartak, but at that time, I saw little or no coaching. I did see crowded courts with recreational players. And in 87, they were all playing with old wooden rackets. I had several rackets with me, and I just gave them to Nick, which was like giving him gold. Through him, I saw many different sports. It was summertime. Moscow's very flat. I can remember the dedication of these cross-country skiers with, metal wheels, just outdated, primitive equipment. But again, saw numerous sports through him. And I can remember he took us to the Moscow, I went with an assistant coach and a former girlfriend. And so anyway, with that, went to the Moscow Marathon. And the shoes that they were wearing, it was like they were 20 years outdated.
I think that's where, we use that phrase a lot. Comfortable is a curse. Even you think about, when Rocky goes over.
Rocky IV.
When he goes over to fight Drago.
Yeah. Natalia has been helping us with fitness, and she had some kids shadowboxing the other day. And they're up in the gym, and I said, hey, run up here and tell her Rocky won.
Yeah.
Rocky beat the Russian.
But I think that's, again, coming from nothing or coming from circumstances that are not perfect or ideal or country club. That's part of the grit. I think that's part of the reason why they want to get out of there and work as hard as they do, right? I think that's part of the success. No,
for sure. That's part of Daniel Coyle's Russian formula.
Yeah.
Number 4 is cultural toughness.
Yeah.
I always say today, in asking you, there's more billionaires in Moscow than any other city in the world. I always say there's 2 types of Russians today. They're rich and poor. But the difference is the rich Russians are still hungry. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
But I think that's why it'll be interesting to talk to Natalia next week.
Yeah.
Here's a funny story, not to digress. So I'm at an athlete. You got to remember, this is 1987, Cold War in Moscow, different world, don't know anybody.
Yeah.
And I'm at a tennis facility, and I just hear my name shouted out. Here once, here twice. I'm just going, no. Actually, just a few years ago.
Like Steve Smith or Smith?
Steve Smith, Smith. And it's like, okay, I hear it. But I spent 4 months, about 5 years ago, going to all these Tennis Europe tournaments. And it was really interesting. Tennis World is a small place. I didn't go one place where I didn't know somebody.
Yeah.
You think, okay, I'm in Slovenia. Who do I know in Slovenia?
Yeah.
But Ian Hamilton, he was a leader with Nike Promotions. I was endorsed by Nike at the time. So again, through the coaching from my older brother, I was told, don't trade anything for rubles. And, the currency at that time wouldn't have really been worth much. And in the stores, there wasn't anything to buy anyway. So I had traded my Nike shoes to a street merchant. So during the day,
entrepreneur.
During the day, Nick was taking us around, and at night, these guys worked out great. But I was just told my brother, wear blue jeans, topsiders, Lacoste shirt, anything that says USA. And of course, warm-ups with the USPTA, the USPTR. So anyway, I meet the famous Phil Knight. He says, Steve, this is Phil Knight. I shake his hands. He looks right at my shoes. And I was wearing a very old pair of Kappa shoes. So
Yeah, I remember Kappa shoes.
I tried to explain to Phil, but he didn't smile. He didn't think it was nice that I wasn't wearing Nike.
Kappa shoes. They used to have those little like snap-on things.
You had time
change the
twice.
Color, you know.
Remember, they did have pairs that you had to. But through those street entrepreneurs, it was interesting. We saw the real Moscow. Got on a city bus and left the area where we were restricted as tourists. Standard of living at that time was very, very low. There's no bubble gum. I can remember being told, you take penny bubble gum, spend $10, you get 1,000 pieces of bubble gum. So I took lots of bubble gum. With another time, the three of us were just walking the streets, and this gentleman was following us. I like to consider myself to be observant. Our mentor, Vic Braden, used to call me the observer's observer. So this guy was following us. So girlfriend and assistant coach, they walk ahead. They don't know. They're just chatting away, and I slow down. So we go around a corner, and then I just get right behind a barrier, like a door. We're just a very safe place on a main street.
Yeah.
And then I was walking behind him.
Yeah.
And went right up to him and go, "What do you want?"
Yeah.
And in broken English, he said, "I want to trade for your blue jeans." For your blue jeans.
And?
No trading with that gentleman. But the reason we are the best lies in the Russian character. We are more resilient. Alexander Volkov. Just some quotes to get going here. Yes, Vic Braden. You ask an American kid to practice for 2 hours, and they practice for 1. You ask a Russian kid to practice for 2 hours, and they practice for 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Daniel Coyle. Recommend you read the Talent Code, especially tennis parents.
Yeah.
And he studies small pockets around the world, whether it's chess or violin. Some discipline is like, why are they so successful here? And he went to Moscow, went to this Spartak club where Natalia will talk to us about that.
Yeah.
The Russian formula is early start, driven parents, powerful, consistent coaching, cultural toughness.
Yeah.
Now, we put a formula to that where you get 1 for each. And so say a young kid from the U.S., Germany, Canada, doesn't really matter. They get a 1 for an early start. Say they're 8 years old, they've started playing tennis. And driven parents, it doesn't mean crazy parents, driven parents. And if your parents are getting you up and they're driving you to tennis practice and this and that, you've got driven parents. I think in the sport I grew up in, you have to have parents that are a little more driven, because the really little kids, they've got to practice seriously. 5 a.m.
3 in the morning, you got to leave.
But powerful, consistent coaching. In the former Soviet Union, and then Natalia could talk to us about Russia today. I've been there many times since. Is powerful, consistent coaching. There's no, bopping and shopping and going from one coach to the next. Cultural toughness. That's where I think we're really in this country and other countries as well. As I always tell a story about this one young kid. Summertime, he came every day, packed a lunch, and he brought coconut water for me. Coconut water. But a lot of the kids have a little plastic card, and they're charging the $20 lunch to the money to their parents' account.
So I mean, for parents listening, what's the advice? I mean, how do you take some of that toughness and instill it into your kids? How much do you give them?
Yeah, my older brother used to say this, and I'm sure he heard it from so many people, that it's tough to have rich parents and poor kids.
Yeah.
McEnroe stole the line, affluenza. When kids are affluent, I should say the parents are affluent, the kids are the ones with affluenza.
Yeah. I mean, like you bring this up a lot, that when you were young, I know I had jobs when I was young, just that was a normal thing where you try to, get a summer job or any little thing to earn money, paper route, mowing lawns, but it doesn't happen too much these days.
Well, even when you say I'm old, 66, so you say to a parent,
it is old when you say it out loud like that.
66, going on 70, baby.
That's
I was vaccinated today.
Yeah.
I asked the nurse, and she said, didn't have to even get out of the car. To digress, she said, it's for 65 and over. Oh, my word.
Well, the part that we're going to digress here a little bit because it felt a little bit strange. But the part that got me was when it was like, okay, what do we do now? And she says, well, just go park right over there and wait for 15 minutes. Wait? Yeah, just to see if anything happens. Like, oh, okay, if he has a reaction. I said, well, what if something does happen? She goes, oh, well, there's paramedics and, medical people right over there. Like, oh, all right, thanks. But that was interesting today. So
yeah. Oh, the world. We've been fortunate that so many people have had it so tough.
Yeah.
Teaching pros being out of work.
Yeah.
With the term brown bag. Hey, kid, just brown bag it.
Yeah, brown bag
but
it.
now the parents don't even know it. I mean, and it goes, I had many Russian kids, one from Canada, and asked the parents, can he peel his own banana?
Mm.
So you could become, quote unquote, Americanized and become very soft very quick. But brown bag means you're going to pack your own lunch.
Yeah. But
the Daniel Coyle, I think it may have been the Wall Street Journal, but 99%, 98% is New York Times. But all you need to do, listeners, is just Google "How to Grow a Super Athlete" by Daniel Coyle.
Yeah.
And that's the article that really went around the world.
Yeah.
Now we'll have Natalia go the pronunciation of these names for us, but from the Spartak club, the small pocket.
Oh, you got this.
You go for it.
You go, because I'm lost on our notes here.
I'll go with the first name.
I've got it.
I'll go with the first name. I'm not even trying the second name. Larissa.
Yeah. Oh, you mean the last name here?
Yeah.
Preobrazheskaya.
One more time for the top.
Preobrazheskaya.
Okay.
Larissa Preobrazheskaya. That's what I'm going for.
All right. Technique is everything. What a great quote.
Yeah.
3 years, 3 hours a day is 1,000 hours a year. Yeah. Competition can wait. There will always be tournaments. In Russia, tennis is still a sport. In the U.S., far too often, it's first and only a business. It makes me cry to say that. But
yeah, so the kids at that Spartak club didn't play competitively for the first.
Yeah, they call shadow swinging imitations.
Yeah.
3,000 hours before playing points. 3,000 hours of practice. Mom and dad, 3,000 hours of practice.
Yeah, imitatia. I think, I don't know, something like that.
With that's not going to fly. I heard you say it in Natalia. That's not going to fly in America.
Yeah.
One theme in the U.S. is it's not play to learn. Excuse me, I get this right. It's a play on words.
Yeah.
In the U.S., USTA, governing body tennis, a lot of great people, a lot of great causes, but we're going to play to learn. We're not going to learn to play.
Yeah.
And you got to do both. Americans around the world, this makes me cry as well, and that's part of our mission with the GreatBase, or the mission with the GreatBase. We used to say we'd like to have more American kids be able to play American college tennis.
Yeah.
It's sad that, college tennis, not necessarily that we have foreign players, but that we have 60% plus.
Yeah.
Anyway, with that, it's around the world. It's a little bit of a joke that how we train players.
And a side note too, it was cool with Daniel Coyle when his book first came out. I was teaching at the Big Braden Tennis College. A couple of students came in and I got to talking to them about Myelin, which I know we'll talk about here in a second. But so they're, oh yeah, I had Daniel Coyle. And I said, yeah, we know Daniel. We're friends with Daniel. And I said, oh really? Like I would love to talk to him sometime if, whatever, an introduction through email or whatnot. And so they actually did. And I was able to get on a phone call with Daniel Coyle about 45 minutes to an hour. And he told me that his parents loved to go to the old Vic Braden Tennis College in Coto de Caza, California. So he had fond memories of them going, and he said they always had a great time, great experience there. But it was kind of a treat for me to be able to talk to him on the phone. We talked a lot about education and the KIPP schools, and
he has a website. Has another book, the Cultural Code.
Yeah, great book. Also, the Little Book of Talent.
The Little Book of Talent. Tennis parents, get that for your children.
Yeah.
Son or daughter, and have them put it in their shoulder bag. It's 52 tips, and they should just read it. Water break, read one a day.
Yeah.
we need to get back to that. Our kids, I just see the shoulder bags open, and I see those books every day. But we did it where we're doing this for a long time. Where, hey, get your book out, read one of the clips, and they're just short, one or two short paragraphs.
Yeah.
But with Myelin, he covers that. It's practice, deep, intent, purposeful practice.
Yeah.
So myelin is produced through repetition. It's a chemical the brain produces and codes neural pathways for all motor programming. All motor programs executed with more speed and more smoothness. It's basically an electrical current for each and every skill.
Yeah. Myelin's basically like a tape that would go around the electrical wire, just to make it secure and fast. And
now you hear people say, you got great internet, get fast internet.
Yeah.
More myelin, more bandwidth. Mm-hmm. Tiger Woods, don't talk so much about the great Tiger anymore, but forgive and forget. But age 2, myelin farmer, the guy just had so much myelin. Piano, chess, no matter what the discipline is, no substitute for a good beginning, no substitute for an early start. Many kids, they have a late start and a bad start. And I just tell them up front, they have an 11-year-old boy here from California. He's improving so fast. But he's almost 12. Natalia's daughter's almost 9. I go, hey, there's 3 years between you.
Yeah.
And she started doing this when she was 4.
Yeah.
And I said, you've just got to be hungry. You've got to put the reps in. And it's tough. I was like, yeah, you got to have a little bit of fun, but play one game of ping pong. Don't play, 1 hour of ping pong.
Yeah.
Let's play one game and let's go.
Got a little catching up to do.
Yeah. But again, the brain must be switched on. So a lot of times kids cruise control. They're out there physically, but they're not out there mentally. And this has become where you hear coaches say it all the time. That's how powerful Daniel Coyle's book has been. Deep, intent, purposeful practice. Russians understand deliberate practice and constant criticism. That's so important. Constant criticism. Don't kill a kid with kindness. Let him know how to get better.
Yeah, you're basically you're like you always say, strive on criticism. You want to know how to get better, what you need to do, whether it's through video or a coach helping you out.
Coming back to ice hockey, my mother used to have this painting of, it was a hockey bench with a coach, standing behind his players and yelling. And it was just, all you could see is just the helmets, because it was really tiny little players. Couldn't even see over the boards. And I can remember I was living in Canada and my 2 boys playing ice hockey, and there's no such thing as virgin ears. The kids are 5, 6 years old, and the referees, the coach is just swearing at the referees. But Yuri Sharapova, I had a chance to be around him so many times. Intense, always yelling. And I think this is something parents need to always hear. And Maria Sharapova, his daughter, could just deadpan it, where, she could do that in interviews. Just boom, make a comment and okay, let's move on. That was a stupid question.
Yeah.
But she said, I understood a long time ago that my father is for me, not against me.
Right.
Kids need to understand that. The parents turn up the volume and become intense. What happens is a child will disappoint their parents. There's, the opposite of expectations is disappointments. So Vic Braden used to say this as a psychologist: is anger covers hurt. But there's a reason the parents are angry, and the word danger is, there's just one letter. Just put D in front of anger, and you got danger. But here's another quote from Larissa. We'll go back through Larissa through Natalia. If you start without technique, it is a mistake. A big, big mistake. Actually, I left out the word big one time. It is a big mistake. A big, big mistake.
Yeah.
The Russians, in all the Soviet sports, they started with gymnastics. It was a theory, a concept that all Russians should become the master of 2 sports, not just one. I've, again, having gone back, and I've only been to Moscow, but I've been back several times since '87, and what a difference. But it's very common to go to a indoor tennis facility, and one court is It's just a gym.
Yeah.
And, they're way ahead of us as far as developing athletes. Like one of my sons went to a Jesuit school where they had very good sports teams, but unfortunately, the Jesuit school had a really nice campus, but they didn't have their own tennis courts. And where I ran my tennis school was just, really just a stone's throw away. And but that meant my son and all the others that played high school tennis, they weren't around the football players, they weren't around the lacrosse players, they weren't around the other athletes. And that's one thing, more so in Europe, definitely in my time in Russia, is that when you are at a tennis facility, you're going to see soccer fields and see tracks and see athletes.
Yeah, same in Germany. You see some of that. No, I mean, in gymnastics, I would definitely, if I had kids or when we have kids, want to get them involved in gymnastics, get the gross motor skills going, body control.
Courage.
Yeah, get rid of the fear.
That's one great thing about a swimming pool, trampoline, is where do you learn body awareness, and you see athletes, I should say. He's a Canadian that we trained to play and teach many years ago. He's a lawyer now in Canada, Danny Cooper, and he was part of, I don't know, Guinness Book of World Records, not Guinness. Is that how you say it? Guinness. Yeah. Is that you do a backflip? All these they do it. They're hanging like 20 of them are holding hands and they flip over. But a lot of the times when people do tricks like that, they land in water. So it's like a kid. Now you don't, with all the liability issues, you don't see kids just fooling around on a diving board because there's no more diving boards.
Yeah. Yeah, now they have those big foam pits. They have those huge centers where they're like bouncing around.
Yeah. I don't know enough about it, but the Ninja Turtles, I think it's becoming like an e-sport. It's growing.
Yeah.
Rock climbing. So,
yeah. But
just the norm, though, is that, kids are doing less and less, not more and more with their body.
Yeah.
Braden used to say this about young kids. He goes, and this was back, Vic's obviously passed away, so he was 25 years older than I was, that Vic would say, have you ever hung around with a little kid? Years ago in the U.S., it seemed like everybody who had a garage, obviously if your parents lived in an apartment, but your parents had a garage, you had a red wagon. And one of the reasons was their families only had one car. You would go to the grocery store and the parents would not only to have the kids play with, but they would pull their groceries back to their house.
Yeah, yeah.
But Vic, you say, you ever go around the corner, the kids, they get in that red wagon, and they're falling off of it, and they roll on the sidewalk, they bounce right back up. And,
yeah.
I think it's true that today, with so much paranoia about so many things going wrong and so many outlets for news, used to be no TV and then TV with 3 stations.
Yeah.
Now if there's 900 TV outlets, so kids are overprotected, and I understand why parents will overprotect, but overprotected and underprepared.
Yeah.
With street smarts, it's you have to be around the streets a little bit to have street smarts. Mm-hmm. So many tennis kids, they've never ridden a bus.
Yeah.
Never ridden a bus.
It's funny you bring that up. My brother went to music school. He's a bass player in Hollywood, and for a while, we were living in Orange County, but I was going to practice actually at UCLA. And so I would go with my brother to Hollywood. I was like 15 years old, 14, 15, I think. And so he would go to music school, and then I would have to take a bus from Hollywood over to Westwood. And the bus was on Sunset Boulevard, basically, in LA. And some of you have probably been to LA, Sunset area. There's some interesting characters that are on a local bus there, the blue bus, 50 cents. But I'll never forget those experiences on the bus where it was, being street smart, keeping your eyes open, and then experiencing some different characters there in Hollywood as a kid. It was kind of fun. I'll never forget it. But yeah, I love that experience that I got when I was young, just to ride the bus in LA,
Oh, I grew up where my parents never had to look for the car keys, but because keys were always in the car, and they didn't have a key to their house.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But I can remember going to Toronto by bus and having to go through Buffalo, and just like a kid who's never been in New York City, just walking around looking.
Yep.
talk about toughness. Trained a young guy, pronunciations of names. It's not like Jeff Jones. Artyom Pogaimi from, he's on our website, Tennis Intelligence Applied.
Yeah.
Free course, 25 hours of tennis content. So he's from Moldova, is one of the poorest countries. His parents were both big-time athletes, one in rhythmic gymnastics and the other in the broad jump. And genetics. So Myelin's important, but genetics, tennis parents...
Helps too.
Tennis parents usually don't talk about the gene pool. This is my contribution.
Yeah.
But Artyom told me this, and I took him up, and I started asking the tennis kids how to make spaghetti. Spaghetti doesn't cost very much, but I was amazed at how many kids didn't know you have to boil water. I've had kids who didn't know. I had kids who didn't know how to boil an egg.
Yeah.
No, they just don't know. It's just like, it's just put right in front of me. They don't have any kitchen duties.
Yeah. Nowadays, it's you just pull out your phone and you go, okay, Uber Eats. You just bring me a little Chipotle.
Back to Soviet sports again through my oldest brother. It was a elimination system, elimination of spots and opportunities. The Soviet system was negative in the sense it didn't allow for second chance. It didn't allow for late maturity. Now, the family, the further someone would go in sports, they would actually get some money, some Russian rubles. But so there was a cutoff. And can you imagine if kids knew that the sports, your position, you're going to go from a group of 20 to a group of 10, and who's going to make it? It's one of the toughest things in tennis. And I don't think that tennis parents know that. And I don't know for what reason in high school they have these no-cut policies. Like, everybody makes it. We don't cut anyone. It's like, well, you've only got 4 courts and you got 40 kids out. And when it comes down to, they don't do that in basketball. Of course, in basketball, they have a freshman team, a JV team, a varsity team. And I think, certainly I understand the upbeat. Okay, let's have everyone be part of the team. Let's make everyone feel good. But if they were told that, you got to start practicing. You got to start practicing in elementary school to be able to make a team in high school.
If you were going to coach a high school team of, let's say you get 30 people coming out, how would you do it?
Well, I think a dream job would be to work at a small school. Obviously, it'd be nice if it was a private school. That can mean too much money. But if you're going to be part of a high school program, you're going to start working with elementary age kids. I mean, early.
But you would cut?
Well, let me finish with, I would, but in a different way. When it comes down to cut the grade, because what's going to happen, the reality, you're going to go to college, you're going to go for a team, and you're going to get cut. You're going to say, come back next year. And there really is no next year, because the players who make the team keep practicing. Yeah. I mean, it's a Disney picture if someone goes and does it on their own, and they come back the next year and they make the team. Like a Michael Jordan famous story, he was cut from his basketball team. Yeah. But the varsity team, but the coach wanted him to get more playing time as a sophomore playing JV basketball. Yeah. A lot of people don't know this. The story is the high school coach was in his driveway every night teaching him how to play because he knew how great he was. Yeah. But, have kids start with multiple sports, and, some sports are very expensive. You could even say some sports like football are very dangerous. I mean, I go as far as saying I think every little boy in America should play tackle football with pads. Yeah. My oldest brother, Matt, my oldest brother, Mike, one of my older brothers, Matt. So I'm you play, I guess, in the 6th, 7th, 8th grade. So I'm in the 6th grade. You got to weigh 80 pounds to get a uniform. I don't get a uniform. You have to weigh between 80 and 120 pounds. And, I'm eating bananas and trying to bulk up so I could stand at the scale and weigh 81 pounds. I'm serious. And he never got to play because he was in the 6th grade. He weighed more than 120 pounds. So when it comes down to, okay, we're going to teach running mechanics. We're going to teach, everyone should be able to play softball, baseball. We're going to play soccer. We're going to play baseball. Those are not expensive sports. Yeah. And, just to start, and you mentioned with gymnastics. Yep. But then to say, all right, where are you going to be as a sixth grader? Now when should someone specialize? I mentioned in a podcast, Sam Volo, great football coach in this small town. They used to say that Sam Volo knew who his quarterback was going to be when he was in the 5th or 6th grade. Of course, that's a small town, but when you read about this book, Amazing Racers, cross country teams. This is what you do all summer long, and you can't just sign up. I've had so many people call and go, "Our child is going out for high school tennis."
I've gotten that so many times.
Could they come by for a lesson?
Yeah.
Here's one that's really sad too. Is that
winter tryouts on 2 weeks?
Our child is advancing from red ball to orange ball. Could you give them a tennis lesson?
Yeah.
You should be swinging at the ball the same way, whether it's red or orange. You
Yeah.
need the same mechanics. A few more things.
In fact, you need better mechanics. Because sometimes the way they're swinging with those red and orange balls, that ball ain't going in the court with a real ball.
Well, I tell people, I said, well, this is great. Why don't we just play with a balloon? Then no one's going to miss. The joke in the U.S., if a kid is, I tell a Russian kid, I say, you better start working hard. They're going to send you to Siberia.
Yeah.
Very cold in Siberia. There's a cartoon where the Russian hockey team, the big red machine that was upset by a group of college kids, 1980, the Miracle on Ice.
Yeah.
The cartoon was, you just see these guys sawing a log and snow falling. And if we knew we were going to be sent to Siberia, we would have won that one game.
Yeah.
We won 99 out of 100, and now we're in Siberia.
I love that's one of my favorite movies, Miracle.
The thing about that is what they did is they used actors who were hockey players. So they didn't use actors and try to pretend they were hockey players.
Yeah.
In the movie Wimbledon, I would have loved to have been the technical advisor. They used Pat Cash. And people say, just remember racket back and move your feet. But they didn't use a tennis ball. You could have really shown actors how to move the racket.
Yeah.
They could look fantastic.
They did like CG.
What's that mean?
Like the graphic special effects.
Yeah, where they put the ball in afterwards.
Yep.
But this is a line for the former Soviet system. Someone who I know worked in a limited capacity with Steve Jobs, the late Steve Jobs. He never suffered a fool twice. In after-school junior development programs, it's over and over and over again. It's the tennis teachers. It's glorified babysitting. But you're going to lose your opportunity, kid. You're out here and you don't do what we tell you to do. It's not to be authoritative, but you're here to get better.
Yeah.
I know that people take swim lessons seriously because it's a life-saving skill.
Yeah, exactly.
I look at some young kids play tennis, and I have no problem telling the parents, if they were playing that way, if that's how they swam, there's a chance they could drown.
Yeah.
That's how they play tennis.
Well, I've heard you say oftentimes too, it's like, it's like they're bleeding. They're just
exactly.
They're bleeding, and it's like, hey, got to save your life.
That's it. Nice shot. That's it. Nice shot. And it's like, are you kidding me?
No,
I tell a lot of parents, what do you think? Well, the light at the end of the tunnel is a train coming right at you. Your kid, they can play a little patty cake tennis off that serve, but let's go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
Dementieva, Elena Dementieva, she was part of the Spartak group. This elimination process, group of 25.
Yeah.
7 of the 25 played on the tour. 4 were in the top 10. Rat Safin, Daenerys Safin, Elena, and Anna Kournikova. With that, different backgrounds where Annikova ended up at Bollettieri's, the Safins ended up in Spain, but where did they start? But the thing is, and we'll go through that, they took the mentality with them.
Safin and Safina.
Safina, yeah.
Amazing, though, both number 1.
Yeah, actually, they surpassed Cliff and Nancy Ritchie from San Angelo, Texas. They had top 10, they were top 10 players in the world. The misunderstanding how the pros practice as pros and how they practice when they were kids. Like Jimmy Connors used to just do really one intense hour.
Yeah.
People, that's how I'm going to practice.
Yeah.
They didn't realize he hit the backboard all day long and all the hours he put in as a kid. I think Martine Hingis was the same thing. She's number 1 in the world and she's going to go ride horses. But she hits so many balls, built the Myelin when they're young. Myelin farmer.
I think kids see that too. For example, the Indian Wells tournament where you can really be there close to the practice facility, be almost literally on the court. They just kind of see the players, and doing an easy 1 hour practice. That's not really how they're practicing outside of tournaments.
Of course, in the beginning of the tournament, it's tougher to get practice courts, but not if you want to stay hit under the lights.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
Bob Brett, age 67, the Australian who was mentored by Harry Hopman, he recently passed away, but I one time was at Indian Wells. I was meeting with Austin Krajicek and Raven Klaassen. One player trying to help out the other player as far as, what to do off the court in pro tennis and such, when to possibly specialize in doubles. So it's a pretty good place to hang out. So we're having lunch or having dinner, but Bob Brett was on the same court with Sillage, Marin Sillage. I mean, all day.
Yeah.
They just didn't go anywhere. For parents who want to find out more about Myelin, tennis coaches, Andres Eriksson has made a lifelong study, basically, Swedish professor, but he works out of Florida State. Just Google Dr. Andres Eriksson. He's got a book. It's over 900 pages on Myelin. So, but he's one who's certainly the scientist to talk to versus Daniel Coyle is someone who's just very curious and touched upon so many different sports, and he needs to be patted on the back because he delivered the message. We've known that for years, but it's not muscle memory; it's brain memory, repetition.
Yeah.
With when you talked about genetics, Murat Safin, when he came on the tour, about the same time Andy Roddick and Roger Federer did, and he was the one who's considered the specimen.
Yeah.
Now, Natalia will be able to tell us that his mother was part of Spartak. Safin being crazy, Roger Federer said, "You never know which Safin's going to show up." Wielander.
I was going to say just quickly, I think that their mother was Dementieva's coach, right? First coach, I believe.
You'd have to ask Natalia.
Yeah, we'll ask her.
I'm not sure. I could say, yes, I think so.
Yeah.
But she'll know. Wielander, the great Swedish player, Mats Wielander, he coached Safin. He said the best business deal he ever made was every time Safin broke a racket, he had to give him $100.
Yeah.
Safin, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I think that, even the wild man, he asked Jimmy Connors to speak on his behalf when he was inducted. Jimmy was his own man as well. But when Safin got there and he saw all the history, people should look up and listen to what he said during his induction speech that, he really apologized for, and he did not take advantage of his awesome, awesome talent.
Yeah.
But I've found that, you're not supposed to categorize or put people in a box, but the Russian women have been much harder working, not too many crazy Russian women versus Russian men. Again, being in Moscow, the Russian girl comes to the courts. They get there an hour early. They go to the corner, and they just shadow swing, forehands and backhands, forehands, backhands. They just keep moving like a real boxer. It's interesting, and you could question how the serve was taught way back when at Spartak, because there's players who came out. Dementieva, Kornikova, serve problems from the beginning. But also, too, Americans need to realize, and it's changed dramatically, is teaching people how to throw a ball.
Yeah.
Now it's fair for women, but when I was a kid, if a girl played a lot of sports, she was considered a tomboy.
Right.
It was so unfair for girls before Title IX. And tennis had its part in that for sure. Billie Jean King playing Bobby Riggs, the Battle of Sexes. Daniel Coyle on money. You can't just throw money at a problem. And I know as an American, the French beat up the French Tennis Federation, the Germans, the German Tennis Federation.
Right.
But when he wrote his book in 2007, the total budget for the Russians was less than $400,000. So say it was like $350,000. Sorry to say this, but there's some people with the USTA. It's public domain.
Yeah.
You can look it up. That there's people there's at least a half dozen people. Now it's changed with the pandemic. A lot of people lost their jobs, but that there's at least a half dozen employees that make that much per year. And I think if you sat down and asked them what they do, producers and parasites, is what do you do? I mean, what do you do for that kind of money?
What would you say you do here? Yeah.
With, some of the differences going back from 1987, here's something I would recommend. The late Robin Williams, he had the lead role in a movie called Moscow on the Hudson, based on a true story. I saw the Moscow Circus in New York and in Moscow. Our street entrepreneurs took us to that. But in New York, my brother knew Russian hockey drills. He had a chance to be the assistant coach of the New York Rangers. But it's all true. I was there. It was, the Russians thought that these Italian cars, Fiats, were made in Russia. And there's only two kinds. In the big black ones, they all were government cars with a KGB, all black.
Yeah.
But you had to have your name pulled out of a lottery, and you had to wait, as like, let's say 7-8 years before you could get a car. Now, everybody over there wants a car. In traffic in Moscow, there's 5 big circles, and they built the roads that way because they didn't ever want to be invaded. So the infrastructure is now too swift. And you could be over there, or Jeff Lewis went with me one time, and these beautiful cars. There's a Lamborghini, and they're going backwards on the sidewalk and they're beautiful underground. But a lot of times, people are suppressed. Like, we couldn't have a car for the longest time, and now in a big city, a lot of really wealthy New Yorkers, they go through their whole life and they don't even own a car.
Yeah.
Here's something with Russians we talked to Natalia about, and maybe it's changed, but back in the day, you weren't issued a birth certificate. So you want to get a passport. But back in the day, no one was leaving the country, so you didn't need a passport.
Yeah.
When you finally get a passport, they say, when's your birthday? And you could make your birthday up.
Oh, I'm going to be, yeah.
And, there's some inside scoop that, some players, they were not the age that the public thought they were.
Yeah.
Now, I had
12 and under tournament, like, hi, my name.
They're shaving. I had 3 people work for me. At the time, I had a husband and wife. They were both bodybuilding champions, and they were our fitness training team and coaches, everyone, and they are beginners.
Yeah.
They are beginners. They're 17. They're beginners. When it comes to fitness, they're beginners. I told these 2 Russian trainers, I said, come up with one word that will define what you do. And, at first I said, give me one word that's going to define what you do. And they said, the language barrier, they said, all right, just give us till tomorrow. They came back with the greatest word, obedience.
Yeah, I love that.
And I use that to this day. Obey the laws of physics, but obey your own goals. You're the one who wrote down you want to be a great player. Yeah. It's not being obedient to the coach.
Discipline.
So at a young kid, the Russian trainer, he had a friend who was very successful in the Tampa area, and they were sponsoring this young tennis player. I won't give his last name, but Nikita. So Nikita comes over, he's 14, and he's playing the 12s. This guy's going to win the Eddie here. He's going to win the Orange Bowl with his eyes closed. And he was a little bit older than my 2 sons. I know Rob Krychek, who we interviewed, he would remember Nikita. So they took him down to Bollettieri's. They just brought him to my place to warm up, my tennis school. But they brought him back. So he ended up spending like 6 months with us. And so remember my former wife at the time, it's his birthday. She gets cupcakes for everyone, birthday cake, and having a little celebration. So if a kid turns 12 and you ask him how old he is, he might forget, well, today's my birthday, now I'm 12. He'll say, I'm 11. But the kid's not going to say, I'm 13, and then get an elbow and say, I'm 11, I'm 12, I'm 11, I'm 12. So we figured out, we talked to him about it, we figured out that he was cheating, and they sent him home. So he never played.
So he was actually 13, not...
Yes. But even sometimes the birthday is not the birthday.
Yeah.
And that's not just Russia. I remember teaching tennis next to Mario Martinez, who from Bolivia. He told me that he played the Orange Bowl when he was 20 years old. So cheating takes place, and we're not just picking on the Russians, but that's something that
I hope that was 18 and under.
Yeah, right. Didn't play the 12s at age 20.
He's 14.
With
playing in the 14s when he's 20.
But Nick Bollettieri, no one has met more people who want to be great players than Nick Bollettieri. They take on big numbers, especially in the summer. And there was a movie back, I think it was in the 70s, The Russians Are Coming. So that was Nick's line. And boy, did they start coming. With female coaches. You just talked to Natalia about this.
Yeah.
My mother used to say this all the time. It's too bad in elementary school that there's not a better balance between male and female teachers. Now, it wouldn't be straight across the board, but a lot of moms, it's just, it's just natural. They baby their babies. And so, kids go years and years before, they're around their mother all the time. Especially, now there's a lot of moms, obviously, that work outside the house. But years ago, kids would just be with their mom when they were really young, and then they're going to elementary school, and the macho male ego, the influence. So why would she say that? Just better balance. But in Russia, female teachers, I would say young. I had nuns when I was really young. Hit you with a stick, and the parents are in the back going harder. It's like a lot of South Africans who, when they went to school, they'd get paddled, and they'd go home, and they get paddled for getting paddled.
Exactly.
The double whammy.
Double dose.
With, but in the Soviet Union, I should say in Russia, there's more female coaches in tennis than there are male coaches to this day. And in being over there, was always amazed how these women would come out, and they're talking to 5 and 6 year olds like they're athletes.
Yeah.
They're just like
Marines.
Like, how are you today? Isn't that sweet? Let me give you a hug.
Yeah.
No, there's a commercial that USTA uses, and if a cute little girl comes out, it's really a pet peeve because I mention quite often, and it's during the US Open, they're showing all these commercials, and she tosses the ball up, she puts the racket up here in the pizza position, and the ball hits her on the head. Yeah. And it's like, no. That's not funny. That's not funny. Like, isn't that cute?
Yeah.
So.
No, it's not.
Well, tennis was an Olympic sport for a long time. And because it was an Olympic sport, it wasn't a priority. It wasn't prestigious in Russia. And just like in this country, it wasn't fair for women. They got lesser jobs. They end up coaching tennis. But it's very, very common to go to a tennis facility and see these young kids, and they hit the ground running. It's like, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
That's the way it should be. That still exists, but in tennis, not so much, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Here's a story with Tatiana. We'll come back to Natalia for last name. I spent a lot of time with this coach from Sochi, same age as I am. Everybody in Russia knows her. In the years gone by at the Eddie Herr, everybody played mixed. And basically, you got your partner. They just pick names out of the hat. So one of our students, an American girl, she had been at Bollettieri's. I hadn't coached her at this time. So how I was introduced to this girl, Liberty Svecki, she went on, she played at Vanderbilt. And but she had been at Bollettieri's for 5 years. And at the time, big buddy, same age as Sharapova. I remember she went to Sharapova's birthday party and brought me back a can of pink tennis balls that said Sharapova on each tennis ball. The party was in New York City. And so working with this Russian player, and Tatiana, the coach, tells the father through a translator that they need to come and see me to have a video made. And they did. And so I filmed the girl, and I said, well, play the Eddie. I told the dad, once the Orange Bowl's over, because it's Eddie Herr first, Orange Bowl second. I said, then come back and, watch the film. And I can remember she did really well, especially in doubles. She won a lot of national titles. But we had, for her, we took a piece of cardboard and taped it to her arm, put a dime on the base knuckle of her index finger to the point where you could tell on her, you look at her palm and it was heads. It wasn't tails. Yeah. And so she's like this, and she just rebuilt her game. Again, there's so many positives about Bollettieri's, but at that time, so this girl, Liberty Stuckey, her father and mother, they didn't realize that Sharapova once a month, incognito in secrecy, was going out and working with Lansdorp.
Right.
Because Yuri really loved the way Sampras played. And so typically people would think, okay, you need to go work with a technician first, like a pre-academy, and then go to an academy. I've had people say the other way around is get a kid really hungry and competitive and fighting for points, where they really love tennis. Okay, now, even though you have several bad years of tennis development from a technical standpoint, but now that you just love the sport and you want to win, this is your thing, now we'll teach you how to hit it. Yeah. But it typically makes sense to, okay, let's get it done right in the beginning. So when I first made videos for Tatiana's players, it was amazing. They were there to play the Eddie Hearn and the Orange Bowl. So I make videos for them. And the tennis was a small place, so one Russian contact sends another group of Russians. And back in the day, it was very common for, it's a Tatiana and a coach and say 6 players, 4 that are in the tournament and 2 that are not, but they're really wealthy. And they're the ones that are really funding the whole trip so anyway, they skip the Orange Bowl, make the video, and it's just, there's a translator, and they're talking to each other. They say, no Orange Bowl.
Yeah.
We're not going to Orange Bowl. Can we just stay here and work on technique? And I said, sure. And I was working at a facility in Tampa where I said, yeah, you can use this court. We got a ball machine. There's a picnic table. Got it set up. Use this court. And I mean, they just went out and they bought gallons of milk and white bread and bologna, and they stayed there all day.
Yeah.
We were there for our 2 practices. We had to go do different things, but they were there all day.
Yeah.
And that's the
mentality.
Actually, some of you mentioned last week is an American coach who had a lot to do with over the years. Mark Hamlin showed up and said, Steve, you love these people. You love their work ethic. You should defect. You should leave America and go to Russia.
Yeah.
I worked with Tatiana's nephew. He spent a great deal of time with us. He was ranked 1 in the early age groups. And what happened with Tatiana, she coached Gefeldnikov, who became number 1 in the world. Mm-hmm. Actually, to digress, one of our students, somebody we worked with, Orlin Stanoychev from Bulgaria, we have this on our course, Tennis Intelligence Applied.
Yeah.
He had been taken to, it was actually Bollettieri's, and they told me he needed more match play. Then he came to us and said he needs to go back to basics.
Yeah.
And he did, and he went 5 sets on Arthur Ashe with Kafelnikov. Right. So Kafelnikov became number 1.
Yeah, so anyway, go, just for the listeners, if you were to go to Tennis Intelligence Applied and watch The Late Bloomer, it's one of the first videos that's on there, Tennis Intelligence Applied.
2 types of pro players, teenage sensation, late bloomers, and every 5 years, there's one man, one woman who's a teenage sensation. There's not too many.
Yeah.
College tennis players, we tell parents, there's 2 types of college tennis players, projects and blue chips. Now, certainly some of the schools, you could be a 5-star. I mean, 3 stars, 4 stars, it's going to be very difficult even to play at a Division III school. But anyway, her nephew, Roman, he ended up playing college tennis in the States, but Kafelnikov set this up. He was only 14, and he went to Germany to try to play pro tennis. And it's really interesting that he's a Russian living in Germany, and that's where he learned to speak English. Because English is the number 1 tennis language. Really, around international tournaments, it's a pretty safe bet to say Russia or Russian, Russian, and it's not just from Russia, but the Russian language. That's really the number 2 tennis language. Our GreatBase course was filmed in Moscow. It's kind of an interesting point.
Yeah.
The young boy demonstrated. You met Mark. He had great support from his family. Coaches tennis now in Moscow, but he was a fighter. He was so fast he could run from Moscow to Miami. There's not that big a bridge. He could run from one end of the USSR to the other. Had strokes, but as a competitor, he just like a lot of young kids, he just didn't put the wires together. You can want to win too badly. It's actually a good goal is to have no goal. And if you really understand, Bill Tilden, tennis players are born out of defeat.
They're playing a little bit of college tennis, right, for Indiana? Or?
He started to. He went to Indiana. Jeremy Wertzman, he's also on our course, GreatBase.
Yeah.
We have actually film of people from the 1980s in our library. But Wertzman, we'll have to have him be on our program eventually. Get guests going. But yeah, he's at the University of Indiana. Mark went there, but he didn't stick it. He didn't go very long. 2 types of Russians. I mentioned this: rich and poor. Say it again. You get Russians to laugh when you hear him say that. But the rich Russians are still hungry. And you ask why is that? That's why it'll be great to talk to Natalia.
Yeah.
Her coaching style. I mean, she's got one pitch.
Yeah.
She has
fastball.
It's just one volume. Let me say this about Russians, and this is not just Russians, but cheating is created from pressure. A kid cheats, a lot of times it's from parental pressure. And again, it's not to point fingers. You can't say all Russians cheat or every kid who cheats, it's the parent's fault. But there's so much pressure put on winning. Now, U.S. academies, many times a lot of kids will cheat because what they do is they drill in the morning and play matches in the afternoon. And there's, and I love so many things about Bollettieri. It's toughest playground in tennis, but there's no such thing as a practice match. You play the match to win. And, sometimes, okay, you're making a grip change. I mean, you're making a swing change.
Yeah.
It's instruction, destruction.
That's why it's tough to do. I mean, if you go to an academy, it typically is for those competitive situations and drilling. So it's
right. So if you win your match in the afternoon, then the next morning you get to move up a group, and the kids are so pumped to move up a group.
Right.
Probably one of the toughest matches. I'm sorry.
Tough to make a grip change in those kind of circumstances.
Yeah, one of the most difficult matches is, and unfortunately, I don't think they're played as often anymore, is a challenge match. 2 players are playing a match. One guy's going to play in the lineup at number 6.
Yeah.
And then when there's cheating. So what I would do in that situation is I would put a team player, a teammate, at the net post. And if there's a conflict, you have an arbitrator, you overrule.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with, in some countries, a young kid has to, they have to sit on the match to call it. But wherever there's corruption too, I think about it. If you have a Russian kid where there's a lot of corruption in Japan, I always say get a Russian and a Japanese kid playing. It's like, uh-oh. But a lot of Russians in Canada. A young girl from Canada spent a lot of months with us. And she did really well, came many, many times. One time she was with us for half a year. So she got to the quarterfinals of one, semifinal of the other. So the Eddie Her Orange Bowl. And I remember just telling the people with Tennis Canada, do not give her wild cards. Don't put her in, the $10,000 events. She can run, she can fight, she can hit a backhand.
Yeah.
But so anyway, I'm at a tournament. This is where I became a star once. I generally try to stay the furthest away. That's what parents should do. If you want to coach parents, you need to be the furthest parent from the fence.
Right.
And conscientious neglect. You don't need to be a fan. You don't need to be, the person driving the bus, leading the entourage, carrying the bag. Again, a lot of parents, they just conscientious neglect. So I'm talking to this player from Canada loudly, and then the umpire says to me, there was just, by that time, it was not a warning, it was a firm command. Mm-hmm. Sir, if you talk to your player, I think actually, think about it, he might have said, if you talk to your daughter. So he was being nice to me because it would be my granddaughter, not my daughter. He said, if you talk to your player one more time, she's going to be penalized and you're going to be removed from the facility. And there's, at that part of the tournament, there's quite a few people watching. And I said, sir, I told her if she cheats one more time, I'm going to grab her by the ponytail and pull her off the court.
You said it loud enough for all the people watching to hear, right?
Everybody heard it.
Yeah.
And she ended up losing. Remember Andy Brandy, who I've had a lot to do with over the years. He came up and he said, is this your player? And I said, yes, but keep it a secret. When it comes down to, she could run, she could fight. She still had holes in her game. And, but, a lot of times the coach is, yes, she is in semifinal. Yes, but she has palm up on the serve.
Yeah, exactly.
She's running backwards and almost hitting the fence.
Winning is not confusing. It's
Japan.
Totally confusing.
Japan's type of place. You leave a briefcase on the street. You go back a week later, it's still going to be there. I remember being in Japan. This one happened, not to pick it on Russia. In Russia, this one happened in the United States either. But a vending
maybe
machine.
Salt Lake City.
Also, maybe you Mormons. Salt Lake City with clean living, a vending machine where you can buy a bottle of whiskey, and it's made out of glass.
Yeah,
they're going to break the vending machine and steal the whiskey.
Yeah,
in '87, I can remember being in Russia, and we're at a park, and if you wanted to have a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi, there was one glass that everybody used, and you'd put the glass back, and the Coca-Cola would come down, and everybody drink out of the same glass.
Yeah, that's crazy.
With
not happening these days.
In Russia, so again, coming back to that, it really should not be the pressure on winning. I do think that is part of the Russian formula. I've worked with so many Russians that, even though you hear technique is everything, there's just like everywhere, there's too many of them where it was just win at all costs. Running programs. I was amazed by this, to be in Moscow, and you just take your kid and you just go and you greet the coach, and then they say, okay, run a few laps, and they help you with your mechanics, but you can actually just take your kid to a running school. Show up, and then you show up periodically. You can come anytime you want. American parents, and not just the U.S., but start in the gym, finish in the gym. You don't show up without a pair of running shoes.
Yeah. You've got to run.
I worked at just a few times when the Roddick's owned it, and then when the Roddick's also sold it. As a consultant, I worked at the former Roddick Tennis Academy, and they had one Russian player, and he said that if players are not, 1, 2, 3, if players are not throwing up, vomiting at the end of the fitness training, that it wasn't a very good fitness session. I know Natalia, she had one kid throwing up today. So here's a couple things. We have a Russian girl from Canada who just came in. Her name is Anastasia. And at one time, there was 5 Russian girls in the top 500 by the name of Anastasia. Tennis really jumped after 2001, where they only had 1 Russian in the top 30. By 2007, they had 5. 2004 from Spartak, Meskina and Dementieva were in the French final. Meskina wins. Yeah. 2004, Sharapova wins. Talk about marketability. Meskina got $100,000 in endorsements, and Sharapova $10 million 1 year.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Natalia will talk about Kuznetsov, who she knows from her training.
Yeah,
she
Kuznetsova.
wins. Yeah, she wins the U.S. Open. And before the press conference, I remember, and I've shared this with people, she had to go clean her strokes. She got hit afterwards. Jack Kramer, Victoria City, used to always do that. You You go, you shower, you have something to eat, and you go back and you hit slowly. You work on your game.
She said, "I've got to go clean my strokes."
You have to, because your strokes will break down. I mean, little kids, parents should know that every ball bounces up high, and the kids are going to start going underneath more and more.
Yeah.
So if they're in a 3-day competition, you go back. You got to rest anyway. You don't have to rest sitting on the couch playing your Game Boy or your computer games, but you need to get out and go through techniques slowly.
Kuznetsova does have compact swings too.
She ended up playing some
forehand and back inside.
She was really young. She played some mixed with Natalia, and I was disappointed that Natalia didn't get her to come in, didn't get her to serve and volley. Today, Sonia Kennan plays for the Fed Cup team. So she grows up in the U.S. To me, she's a Russian. It's just by mentality. And that's a compliment.
Yeah, exactly.
With Sasha Zverev, he, his brother, 10 years older, his parents, Russian, but he grew up in Hamburg, grew up in Germany.
Yeah,
but he's Russian to me, and I think to the tennis world.
Yeah,
it just has that mentality, and that's a compliment. Mm-hmm. Medvedev, parents found a way for him to be in France. France arguably has the best competitive system in the world. Lots of clay courts. The UTR is based off the French system.
Right. And
so Medvedev grew up in France, a lot of significant formative years, Russian mentality.
Yeah.
With Ria Sharapova, she grew up in the U.S., again, Russian mentality.
Yep.
This kid, young Rublev, I was at a tournament with my son Connor, two of them actually, where Rublev was, and he must have been 17 or 18. And you could just see it in his eyes.
Didn't he keep asking, like, hey, you want to play set? Want to play set? Want to play?
Yeah, he's always asking to hit, and a couple of the guys said, oh, that guy gives it a rest. He's going to burn out. And no. Really, it's not burnout. It's frustration factor. People don't burn out. Vic Braden used to say, well, people will burn people out. The game doesn't burn people out. If you're getting better, you don't burn out. What happens to so many people is they have a ceiling on how good they can be because they have a very poor technical base. So they work, and you can get to the point where, I'm still practicing 4 or 5 hours a day, and I'm not getting any better.
Yeah.
Here, I'll just end with one story, my favorite Russian story. But, maybe we set this up for next week with Natalia about the Russian mentality. Mm-hmm. So Tatiana from Sochi, she's well known. Everybody knows her in Russia. She used to always, dress very nicely. She was a tennis coach, but she would many times not dress like a tennis coach. But she was really respected. Her nephew Roman, he coaches tennis now. So she was watching my son Connor, and she said this for Connor. He was playing somebody who was a lesser player, and he was just being lazy, which is very common. Now, we do a lot of things to avoid that. Say, okay, you get two levels of players. You got a player who's a solid player. He's 14 years old, and he's playing somebody who's 16 years old. Say, all right, go play. First set's 40-love. Mm-hmm. We can start at 3-all, play no ad. So you can make it, shorter. But say for example,
give them a lead.
Yeah. So your player A, I'm player B, and so you're player A, you're better than I am.
Of course.
Yeah. So you serve at love 40. I serve at 40-love. If I win that, then I get to jump up to trying to beat you with only a 2-point lead. If I win that, then I get to try to beat you with only a 1-point lead. And then we've had it where it keeps climbing, where someone actually turns it around, where now one person's spotting the other person. Yeah. Another way to do it is you only get a game if you win 3 points in a row. Mm-hmm. But so this is something to be. This is where you might get some tight calls.
This is where you could get a little cheating.
A little cheating, but a few tight calls and say, all right. No telling what the punishment would be if you lost a set. So she tells me that this is what they did with Kafelnikov. If he played somebody in a set in practice and he wins 7-6, he had to run 6 miles. So you know where I'm going with this. So now it's 7-5. He's got to run 5 miles. 6'4"? And you just ask kids, okay, so you went 6'4", what do you have to do? Run 4 miles. And you want to have them do it where they're right in front of you and you got a stopwatch. And so 6'3", 6'2", 6'1". 6'1", I can do an easy mile, but 6 love, I don't have to run.
Yeah.
And that kid's going to be razor sharp. He's going to focus in on every point. Braden used to tell people, beat their brains in, beat them 6-0, 6-0, and then afterwards ask them if you can buy it.
Yeah.
What's that?
Take them to lunch.
Yeah, take them to lunch. See if you can, ask them for a lemonade.
Yeah.
But no, I think with Russian tennis, there's so many things to be said. Tsitsipas, I think it was Medvedev and Tsitsipas had a little bit of an argument, and one said the other, maybe it's just because his father is Greek, but you're only half a Russian or something. But I mean, I don't know the ins and outs. Fake Russian, I don't know, in or out. But the Russian mentality. My brother was shocked. He said when we first watched Russian hockey players train that there was a big second hand underneath the scoreboard, and they had the hockey glove off, and they've got the finger to the carotid pulse, and they're monitoring their heart rate to how hard they're working. But there's something in the water because how many kids, and it's not just Russia, it's also certainly from Belarus or from the Ukraine, but how many times are you getting? There's a gal whose last name ends in OVA,
all the time,
and we have a young girl here from Arkansas working really hard, and she's way behind with the running, and 2 sisters actually, getting better. You can catch up, but that's where you're a young player. Understandably, they don't have international experience, so their circle's very small. Mm-hmm. The Germans have a word for that, Kreismeister, and that should exist in tennis, but it doesn't in this country. The lens, they can only see so much, but it used to be where, okay, I'm going to play in my, the competition to be a member of the team, whether it's individual sport like tennis or a team sport like volleyball. Mm-hmm. So you have team competition, then you have league competition. And then from your league, there's a conference. And then from your conference, there's a section. So you go from section, then you go to states, regionals, nationals. American parents need to understand that it was a mistake. Level 2 and level 3 nationals. Yeah, it made tennis way, way too expensive. It used to be that very few kids would actually play the indoors in comparison to the outdoors. They would play the Thanksgiving indoor tournament. And then there was just clay courts and hard courts. Yeah. Grass, there was just one grass court tournament in the 18s. But people played within their section. Now, and the USTA is wising up, is that, it's a $1,500 T-shirt. Yeah, you get on an airplane, you go, and it's a level 3 nationals. It used to be so bad that you could sign up for 4 tournaments, 4 national tournaments. It could be a level 2, level 3. Yep. And you're waiting to see which one you get accepted in. You could be living, really beat it up. You could be living in Boston and want to play in Honolulu. Yeah. And you're waiting to the last second to buy the flight, and the kid's not going on their own. So it's at least, one parent, one kid. Yeah. Airfare, getting off the airplane, checking into the, you got to rent a car, check into the hotel, go to the restaurants, and it's just way too much money. So, but competition, the real environment, so that's what Daniel Coyle, cultural toughness. It's the 4 inches or the 5 inches, the distance between your left ear and your right ear. Yeah, and that's where kids really have to be tough. 3 types of love: soft love, tough love, crazy love. And I don't think you watch Russians train and they're yelling and screaming at each other. They're not the ones that are crazy. We Americans are the ones that are crazy. Yeah. Like, mom and dad, how much money have you invested in your kids' tennis? Yeah. And they can't even run a mile. I mean, it's bad. But it's, it's the repeat business. Let's cheerlead them. Let's tell them they're great. So it'll be interesting to talk to Natalia. Yeah. Why don't you wrap it up?
I was going to say from Daniel Coyle's book, the 4 points, I think, be great to talk to Natalia about these: the early start, the driven parents, the powerful, consistent coaching, and the cultural toughness.
And I think with that too is that, Alexei, Natalia's husband, they have 4 children. They have 2 older boys, and then Tacy is a twin with Timothy. And, so you have to go back and go through their ages. But when the 2 boys were brought to us, they needed to do a lot of technical work. And that's something too, is that many times in tennis, if you study tennis families, it's the first tennis player. They're going down the road. The parents, they're going down the road for the first time. They haven't taken a tennis player down the road.
Yeah.
So they're going down the road for the first time. And it's very interesting how some of them right away, it's like they've only been in it 3 years and they have an opinion. They feel like they have some expertise on going down the tennis rope. They've never been down it.
Yeah.
And then it even gets more complicated because you have a lot of coaches that they've never taken a beginner from, first base, second base. They've never had taken a kid down the road where they go up different levels.
Right.
But so anyway, the younger player, the younger sibling, many times the older siblings are the ones that help. They teach the parents, and there's more learning when there's more children in a family. I mean, Bjorn Borg, only child, so I don't want any kids to hear this. Go, gee, I don't have any brothers and sisters.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, it'll be interesting to talk to her. I think it's really the Russian mentality, and it's more Russian women than Russian men. But why have they done so well? And years ago, we could get into. We haven't really talked. We will, but talk more about American tennis. What's the decline of American tennis? We have touched upon it tonight. Is too much money is being spent. It's become too much of a business. We're killing kids with kindness. Letting them know, we have a no cut policy. You don't apply for a job and everybody gets it.
Yeah.
So there has to be a reality check somewhere.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. Russian tennis, or tennis in Russia, part 1. And then next week we'll be interviewing Natalia Sorokina. Am I saying that right? Hopefully.
Yeah.
Something like that. And we'll talk more about her experiences at the Spartak club and raising her 4 tennis playing kids.
And I'm just going to do a lot of listening because Andy's fluent in Russian.
Duh. Я понимаю. All right. Thanks a lot for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll catch you in the next episode.